You feel it but can't prove it. You say something, and they twist it. You try to leave, and somehow you end up apologizing. They don't raise their voice. They don't insult you. They just shift the ground beneath your feet. A sentence here, a silence there, a sigh that makes you feel guilty. It's not chaos, it's quiet control. And that's what makes it so terrifying. Because the moment you try to speak up, you're told you're too sensitive, too emotional. You're imagining things, so you start second-guessing everything. Not just what they said, but what you felt. That's the theft. Your emotional compass slowly stops working, and in its place, a fog, a heaviness, a question that loops in your mind like a broken record. Am I the crazy one? Let me tell you something that no one told me early enough. The most dangerous kind of manipulation isn't loud, it's subtle, invisible, and it's happening to more people than you think. Because narcissists rarely walk in with fangs bared. They don't scream, "I'm going to control your life." Instead, they charm. They compliment. They play the long game. And by the time you realize something's wrong, you're too emotionally entangled to walk away clean. But here's the good news. What can be named can be unlearned. What you can see, you can stop falling for. In this video, we're going to go through 7 subtle ways narcissists control your emotions without you even realizing it. Not to judge, not to shame, but to help you see the patterns. So you can step out of the game and reclaim your emotional authority because you weren't overreacting. You weren't weak. You were manipulated methodically, invisibly, and repeatedly. And once you see the playbook, they can't run the same plays again. Before we dive into the first tactic, let's get clear on something essential. What exactly is narcissism? Most people think narcissists are arrogant show-offs, loud and self-obsessed. But that's just one version. True narcissism is more insidious. It's not just about confidence, it's about control. A narcissist isn't just proud of who they are. They need others to orbit around their needs, feelings, and reality. At its core, narcissism is a deep insecurity wrapped in charm or entitlement. They don't just want attention, they want dominance over perception, especially yours. There's a big difference between healthy self-esteem and narcissistic manipulation. Healthy self-esteem doesn't require tearing others down. It doesn't punish disagreement. It doesn't crumble when boundaries are set. But narcissism? It feeds on control, validation, and superiority, often at the expense of your emotional clarity. And if you've ever walked away from a conversation feeling worse about yourself, even though nothing bad was said, you may have been dealing with a narcissist. So let's get into it. Let's walk through the first subtle weapon narcissists use to shape your emotional world without ever raising their voice. Because once you spot the weapon, you don't have to be its target anymore. The first way narcissists control your emotions is gaslighting, the quiet distortion of your reality. This is the foundation of almost every manipulative pattern, because if they can reshape what you remember, they can reshape how you feel. And once they own your emotional response, they don't need to raise their voice to dominate you. They just need to bend the truth until your truth disappears. But gaslighting doesn't usually come with fireworks. It starts with a shrug, a laugh at your expense, a gentle suggestion that maybe your memory isn't that reliable after all. You're being dramatic. That never happened. You always twist things. You're too sensitive. It doesn't need to be believable. It just needs to be repeated. I once worked with a man who spent years in a relationship that looked calm from the outside. No shouting, no name-calling. But every disagreement left him confused and apologizing for things he didn't remember doing. She would say, "You said something really cruel last night." He'd ask, "What did I say?" She'd reply, "You know what you said. I'm not going to repeat it." And that was it. He'd walk away doubting his memory, questioning his decency, and carrying guilt that wasn't his. That's how gaslighting works. It creates confusion and then weaponizes that confusion to gain control. Your internal compass is no longer trusted, so you start using theirs. But here's the real danger. After a while, you don't need them to gaslight you anymore. You do it to yourself. You say, "Maybe I am overreacting." You tone down your words, water down your feelings. You start second-guessing your own instincts because they taught you not to trust them. This is what Epictetus warned us about. He said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." But gaslighting steals that reaction from you. It interrupts the sacred space between stimulus and response and fills it with self-doubt. Suddenly, you're apologizing for being hurt. You're afraid to bring up a concern. You're silencing yourself and calling it maturity. Let's make something clear right now. Wanting to be understood is not weakness. Remembering things differently is not a flaw. Feeling hurt is not a sign that you're unstable. The Stoics teach us to pursue clarity, not to surrender it. One practical way to reclaim your emotional reality is through a technique I call the reality journal. Here's how it works. Whenever you leave a conversation feeling foggy, write down exactly what was said and how it made you feel. Don't analyze it. Don't justify it. Just capture it. Then later, when you're alone and your emotions have cooled, go back and read it. Ask yourself, was that guilt mine, or did it come from their framing of the situation? Over time, you'll notice patterns. You'll start to see when someone consistently leaves you feeling guilty, confused, or unstable without any clear reason. That's not you being sensitive. That's them being strategic. Seneca wrote, "The first step toward wisdom is to know what's within your control. And your perception, your clarity is within your control." Gaslighting only works if you let someone else become the narrator of your life. So take that role back. Name what's happening. Write it down. Reclaim the space between what you feel and how you respond. Because once you see the tactic, it loses its power. And more importantly, you get to see yourself clearly again. The second way narcissists control your emotions is guilt-tripping, turning your empathy into a leash. You care. You don't want to hurt anyone. And they know that. So instead of controlling you through fear or aggression, they use something far more effective, your own conscience. They say, "After everything I've done for you," they sigh, "I guess I just care more than you do." They whisper, "It's fine. I'll handle it, like I always do." No yelling, no accusations, just guilt. Heavy, quiet, and carefully placed like a weight on your chest. And the most dangerous part, you'll think it's coming from you. You'll start offering more, compromising more, over-explaining yourself, trying to make it up to them, for something that was never your fault. That's the trap. Because guilt-tripping works best on good people, the ones who reflect, who apologize, who want to do the right thing even when they've done nothing wrong. One woman I coached once said, "I would spend days trying to fix his disappointment, even when he never said what I did wrong." That's not love. That's emotional blackmail delivered with a smile. Here's what's really happening beneath the surface. They're rewriting the emotional rules of the relationship. In their world, you are responsible not just for your actions, but for their moods, their triggers, their unmet expectations. And if you push back, you're called selfish, ungrateful, cold. So, slowly, you stop setting boundaries. You start giving in to avoid the guilt hangover. You become the emotional caretaker for someone who never takes care of yours. Epictetus said, No man is free who is not master of himself. But guilt tripping is designed to take that mastery away, to make you feel free while staying emotionally enslaved. So how do you break the spell? It starts by drawing one brutal, essential line. You are responsible for your intentions, not for their interpretation. You can show up with honesty, care, and respect. And if that's not enough for someone, that's their wound, not your debt. Here's a Stoic practice I often give to clients dealing with manipulative guilt. I call it the intent inventory. Before responding to guilt-laced pressure, pause and ask yourself, did I act with integrity? Was I clear about my boundaries? Did I try to meet their need honestly? If the answer is yes, stop. You've done your part. You are not obligated to sacrifice your peace just because someone else can't manage their disappointment. Because here's the truth no one tells you. Narcissists don't want equality in relationships. They want emotional leverage. And guilt is their favorite currency. But guilt should be a compass, not a collar. It should guide us when we cross our values, not when someone else crosses our boundaries. And if someone repeatedly uses guilt to extract more of your time, energy, or forgiveness, that's not a relationship. That's control wrapped in concern. You can love someone and still say no. You can care about their pain and still protect your peace. So next time you feel guilt rising, pause, trace it, ask, whose voice is this really? And then remember, you don't owe anyone your suffering just because they're uncomfortable with your self-respect. The third way narcissists control your emotions is by playing the victim, flipping the story so they're never the one at fault. They insult you but accuse you of being cruel. They ignore you but claim you're the one being distant. They break your trust and somehow end up crying in your arms. And you're left thinking, maybe I pushed too hard. Maybe I should have said it more gently. Maybe I am the one who keeps hurting them. That is the emotional sleight of hand. In healthy relationships, vulnerability brings people closer. But with narcissists, vulnerability is used as a shield and a sword. They don't show emotion to heal. They show emotion to hide. When you confront them about something real, they spiral into emotional theatrics. They talk about their childhood wounds. They say, "You don't know how hard I've had it." They bring up every time someone betrayed them in the past, and how now you're doing the same. The message is clear. You're not allowed to be upset with me because I hurt more than you. It's emotional blackmail in disguise. And if you're not careful, you'll spend more time comforting the person who wronged you than standing up for what you need. One client of mine said it best. I wasn't allowed to be angry because his pain always had the final word. That is not emotional intimacy. That is emotional hijacking. Here's the cruel genius of this tactic. It makes you feel guilty for holding someone accountable. It convinces you that compassion means silence. But Stoicism teaches us the opposite. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." And that includes the emotional games they play. A narcissist doesn't want resolution, they want reversal. They want to spin the emotional narrative until they're the one who's been harmed. And you're the one doing damage control. You begin to associate honesty with hurting them. You stop speaking up not because you don't care, but because you're exhausted from apologizing every time you try. So how do you respond when someone constantly plays the victim? You don't attack. You don't defend. You observe. You hold the line. Here's a Stoic technique I use. I call it the accountability mirror. When you're confronted with someone's emotional meltdown, pause and ask, are they responding to the issue or avoiding it? Is their emotion connected to the present or pulling you into their unresolved past? Does this pattern repeat whenever you assert a boundary? If the answer is yes, then you're not in a conversation. You're in a performance. And your guilt is the ticket price. And here's something else to remember. People can be hurt and harmful. Trauma is real, but it's not an excuse to weaponize pain. Your compassion doesn't require you to abandon your clarity. You can listen and still hold them accountable. You can care and still say, this behavior isn't okay. You can be there for someone without disappearing in the process. Because in the Stoic worldview, true strength isn't about suppressing emotion. It's about refusing to let it cloud what's just. So next time they turn your concern into an attack, take a breath. Stand firm. And remember, it is not cruel to hold someone accountable. It is cruel to expect love without responsibility. The fourth way narcissists control your emotions is through silence. Not just any silence, but the kind that punishes. It's called the silent treatment. They're not just taking space. They're withholding connection to create tension. They want you to feel the absence, to feel abandoned, to feel small. And it works. You replay everything you said. You wonder what you did wrong. You text again softer this time just to check in. But here's the truth. You're not being ignored because you were cruel. You're being ignored because you had a voice. That's what the silent treatment punishes: your presence, your boundary, your truth. And the longer the silence lasts, the louder the guilt becomes. You start thinking, I pushed too hard. I should have kept quiet. I'll just say sorry, even if I don't know what for. And just like that, you walk back into control, voluntarily. Epictetus once warned, "Who is your master? He who has authority over what you wish or fear." And in this case, what you fear is disconnection. What you wish for is resolution, but it's a moving target. That leads us to the fifth way narcissists manipulate emotions. Conditional love, making you earn back what should have never been taken away. After the silence ends, there's no real resolution, just a subtle shift. You behave better, speak softer, keep things lighter, and they reward you with attention again. A smile, a laugh, a small gesture of warmth. It feels like love, but it's not. It's relief. Relief that the Cold War is over. Relief that you're no longer in exile. And that's the trap. Their affection becomes transactional. Their kindness becomes a prize, one you learn to chase. Over time, you begin changing yourself just to maintain emotional safety. You filter your words. You hide your reactions. You prioritize their comfort over your honesty. This is not compromise. This is emotional conditioning. You become a version of yourself that's easier for them to manage, but harder for you to recognize. Seneca said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." But how do you prove yourself in a relationship that punishes your authenticity? You can't. Because with narcissists, love isn't love. It's leverage. So how do you reclaim your emotional freedom from this reward and punish system? It starts with this uncomfortable truth. If someone's affection disappears every time you assert your boundaries, it was never love, it was a leash. The Stoic practice here is called inner anchoring. Instead of relying on their approval to feel safe, you return to your own integrity. Ask yourself, did I speak honestly? Did I act with respect both to them and to myself? Did I abandon myself to keep the peace? If you didn't, then let their silence speak. Let their withdrawal expose their pattern. Because once you stop chasing their approval, their power fades. And you'll realize something they never wanted you to know. Real love doesn't need to be earned back. Real love doesn't disappear when you speak your truth. You are not too much. You are not the cause of their coldness. You are simply the mirror they couldn't control. And the moment you stop apologizing for your reflection, is the moment they lose control over your emotional weather. The sixth way narcissists control your emotions is projection, accusing you of the very things they're guilty of. You try to talk about how distant they've been lately, and suddenly you're the cold one. You call out their dishonesty, and they snap back. You're always twisting things. You ask for clarity, and they say, "Why are you so controlling?" It's not conversation. It's a mirror maze. You walk in with a concern. You walk out with shame. Projection is one of the most confusing tactics because it doesn't just avoid accountability, it flips it onto you. And because you're emotionally involved, you start believing it. You replay your tone. You double-check your motives. You start asking yourself, "Wait, did I go too far?" That's the moment they've won. Because now, instead of questioning them, you're interrogating yourself. Let's be clear, everyone has moments of defensiveness. But narcissists weaponize it. Projection allows them to keep their hands clean while making you feel dirty. It diverts the conversation, destabilizes your sense of fairness, and keeps you too emotionally entangled to push back. Marcus Aurelius warned us, "The nearer a man comes to a calm mind, the closer he is to strength." But projection is designed to disturb that calm, to provoke you into reaction. And once you're reactive, the narrative is sealed. See, you're the problem. Look how emotional you get. Now you're apologizing again for something they planted. So how do you fight projection? You don't. You observe it. You name it internally. You stay grounded. Try this mental reset in the moment. Is this about me, or is it leaking from their guilt? Because when someone accuses you of motives you've never had, chances are they're exposing theirs. Which brings us to the final emotional weapon. The seventh way narcissists control you is through constant criticism disguised as help. It doesn't sound like an attack. It sounds like concern, like just being honest, like helping you grow. But the message underneath is always the same. You're not enough. They comment on how you talk, how you look, how you think, choose, laugh, feel, dream. And it's always just enough to make you second-guess yourself without being able to call it cruelty. It's the death of confidence by 1,000 corrections. You'll hear things like, "You're really going to wear that? I'm just saying people might not take you seriously. Relax, I'm just trying to help." It's not feedback, it's erosion. Over time, you internalize their voice. You start criticizing yourself before they can. You make yourself smaller, quieter, safer just to avoid the next comment. And that's the tragedy. They don't even need to say anything anymore. You've absorbed the role of your own critic. Seneca once wrote, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." But when that imagination has been shaped by constant critique, the suffering feels endless. So what's the Stoic stance against this kind of erosion? It's called truth anchoring. Every time you hear a critique, pause and ask, is this useful or just destabilizing? Would someone who respects me say this? If I remove the tone, is there truth or just control? And most importantly, does this feedback make me stronger or just quieter? Because growth isn't supposed to make you feel smaller, and love isn't supposed to sound like correction. When someone constantly edits your existence, they're not helping you evolve, they're making you easier to manage. And here's what they fear the most: that one day you'll stop asking for their approval and start trusting your own voice again. Now you've seen the full playbook. 7 quiet but powerful ways narcissists manipulate your emotions. Gaslighting, to make you doubt your memory. Guilt-tripping, to turn your empathy into control. Playing the victim, to avoid responsibility. Silent treatment, to punish your honesty. Conditional love, to make affection a transaction, projection to trap you in their guilt, and constant criticism to wear down your self-trust. No screaming, no violence, just a slow reshaping of your emotional reality. And the longer you live inside that fog, the harder it is to find your way back. But you're not powerless. Stoicism wasn't built in monasteries. It was forged in politics, in war, in betrayal, in everyday life. It's not a philosophy of detachment, it's a philosophy of sovereignty. So let's talk about how to take your emotions back. The first step is this. You are not responsible for how someone else chooses to interpret your boundaries. That's not cruelty, that's clarity. In the Stoic worldview, the most sacred territory is your own mind. And the most dangerous invasion isn't physical, it's emotional. It's when someone else starts deciding what's true for you. So how do you protect that territory? Let me share 3 simple, practical Stoic tools. Each one is designed to bring you back to center and guard your emotional clarity. 1. The emotional audit, tracking what's yours and what isn't. Every day, spend 5 minutes writing down 2 things. 1 emotion you felt strongly today. What caused it and whether it was internal, your choice, or external, someone else's action. Ask, did I react or did I respond? Was that guilt mine or planted? Over time, this will build what the Stoics called discernment. Not everything that touches you belongs to you. 2. The pause principle, buying space between trigger and response. Before you reply to an attack, a guilt trip, a subtle jab, pause. Literally take a breath. Count to 3. Then ask, what would the calm version of me say right now? Marcus Aurelius called this inner fortress, the mind untouched by pain, by fear, by praise. Your pause is the gate that guards that fortress. 3. Voluntary discomfort, training your emotional muscles. One of the most powerful Stoic exercises is voluntary discomfort. Choose a moment each day to tolerate discomfort without reaction. It could be cold water, a delayed reply, a hard conversation, a moment of silence. Why? Because when you train your nervous system to remain still in discomfort, you become harder to manipulate. The narcissist's greatest weapon is your need for comfort and resolution. Take that away, and you take away their leverage. These practices aren't magical. They won't fix toxic people, but they will change something far more important: your ability to stay whole in the presence of fragmentation. Epictetus said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Sometimes, protecting your peace will look selfish to the person trying to control you. Let it. That's the price of emotional independence. So write, pause, train discomfort, and above all, refuse to let someone else become the narrator of your life. Because the moment you stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you, is the moment you reclaim your emotional authority. You feel bad, but you don't know why. You doubt yourself, but can't explain what changed. You walk into conversations feeling clear, and walk out feeling cloudy. That was the beginning. The confusion, the exhaustion, the shame that doesn't quite have a source, the slow fading of your voice. You weren't imagining it. You were being controlled. Not through force, through psychology. 7 small ways, repeated daily, silently rewritten into the script of your life. And the most dangerous part, they made you believe it was your fault. That's what narcissistic control looks like. It's not always shouting or slamming doors. Sometimes it's a sigh, a smirk, a silence, a compliment with a hook. But now, you see it. You have language. You have structure. And that's power. Because what was once invisible is now obvious. What once disoriented you now makes perfect sense. You don't need to shout. You don't need revenge. You don't even need closure from them. You just need to walk away from the game. Stop trying to prove your worth to someone who needs you, confused to feel powerful. Stop shrinking your truth to fit inside their fragile ego. The Stoics never promised peace from the world. They promised strength within it, a calm center in the middle of chaos. So go back to that calm. The next time someone rewrites your memory, anchor yourself in what you know. The next time guilt rises out of nowhere, ask where it came from and whether it belongs to you. The next time someone plays the victim, watch if the pain leads to connection or control. And if their love vanishes the moment you assert a boundary, that was never love, that was a leash. Here's the truth you need to carry out of this video. You're not broken, you're not dramatic, you're not unstable. You were in an emotional battlefield with someone who didn't play fair. And now you have the tools to defend yourself. Your emotional clarity is sacred. Your peace is not selfish. Your self-respect is not up for debate. You may not win the argument, but you no longer need to. You're not here to convince anyone, you're here to reclaim yourself. And if you're still healing, that's okay. Just remember, you don't have to feel better to get free. You just have to see clearly. And you do now. If this video helped you reclaim even a small piece of that clarity, hit subscribe and share your story in the comments, not to get attention, but to remind someone else they're not crazy either.